Okay, these notes are your concept number 4, which is writing linear equations in slope-intercept form. So the first thing we're going to look at is, again, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, and we looked at this in the last concept where you were graphing in this format. So now we're going to, instead of graph, we're going to just write the equations. So again, your m value is your slope. So that's the coefficient that's connected to your x term. And your b value, your constant at the end of the equation, is always your y-intercept, or where your graph crosses the y-axis at. So our first example, we want to write an equation of the line that passes through the point -1, 3, and has a slope of 4, or of -4, sorry. So we know a point, and we know the slope. Okay, now, in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need two pieces of information. You need the slope and a y-intercept. Okay, so I currently have one of those. I have the slope. Okay, but the point that I have is not the y-intercept, so I cannot use that as the intercept. I then need to plug these values into the equation of y equals mx plus b so that I can figure out what my y-intercept actually is, since that's the only piece of the information that I need that I don't have. Okay. So remember, your point is always x comma y, and your slope goes in for your m value. So if I use my equation y equals mx plus b, I've got 3 equals -4 times -1 plus b. So 3 was my y value, equals m of -4, your x value from your point was -1, and then plus b. Okay, so once you plug those values in, your goal here is to solve for b, solve for your y-intercept, because again, it's the piece of information that you need to write your equation that you don't already have. So we have 3 equals -4 times -1 becomes a +4, and you bring down your plus b. Now, to solve for b, because again, that's our goal, is to figure out what our b value is, we need to subtract 4 to the other side so that your b value is isolated. So when you subtract 4 to the other side, 3 minus 4 is going to give you a -1 equals b. Now that you know what your b value is, and you already knew what your slope was from the original information, now you can plug those two values into your equation to write your final answer. So when you solve for b, that is not your final answer. You still need to plug that back in, because originally our question was to write the equation of the line. So the equation of the line would be y equals -4x, because -4 was our slope, and then -1 because our b value was -1. Next example, same situation. We have write an equation of the line that passes through the point 6, 3 and has a slope of 2. So again, I know a point that falls on my line, and I know that my slope is a +2. Okay, so again, I know part of the information that I need to have to write my equation, which is I have my m, but I don't have my y-intercept. So I again need to plug in all of the information that I do have. Your point is x comma y, so in your equation, you're going to have y equals mx plus b, so instead of y, we have 3 equals 2, which was our slope, times 6, which was our x value, and then plus b. Okay, so you're just replacing each variable that you have, your y, your m, and your x, with the given information. So 3 equals 2 times 6 plus b. 2 times 6 gives you 12, so that simplifies to 3 equals 12 plus b. Subtract 12 from the other side, because remember, our goal is to solve for b to figure out what our y-intercept is. 3 minus 12 is a -9. So now that you know your y-intercept, and you originally knew your slope was a +2, you can now write your final equation. So in the form y equals mx plus b, your equation should be y equals 2x minus 9. Now, in the third example, we want to write an equation of a horizontal line that passes through the point 2, 5. Okay, so they tell us it's a horizontal line. Now, in this one, they don't come straight out and tell you exactly what the slope is, but knowing that it's a horizontal line, you should know that the slope is equal to 0. All horizontal lines have a slope of 0. With that information, okay, so you can plug this into the equation just like we did before. So m equals 0 because it was, again, a horizontal line. So that's a line that goes through your y-axis. Okay, so a horizontal line has a slope of 0, and you know your point was 2, 5. So we're, again, just going to plug this into our equation and solve for the b value. So y equals mx plus b becomes 5 equals 0 times 2 plus b. 0 times 2 just becomes a 0, right? Or it just cancels. So you end up with b equals 5. Now, when you go to write your equation, your slope was a 0. So when you plug that in, truly your equation is y equals 0x plus 5. Because it's a 0x, again, when you multiply anything times 0, it just gives you 0. So that truly cancels this term out. So your final answer is just that y equals 5, okay? Which, again, is an equation of a horizontal line, because remember, a horizontal line goes through your y-axis. So your equation should just simply be y equals 5. Okay? All right, another example. So now this is a little bit different. We're writing the equation of the line that passes through the points -2, 5 and 2, -1. So we're given 2 points here, and that's it. So remember, in order to use the equation of y equals mx plus b like we have in the last 3 examples, we were able to use a point and a slope in there. So because I don't know a slope yet, your first step here, if you're given 2 points, is to find the slope, so that then you can complete the rest of the equation the same way we did in the last 3 examples. So the first step you're going to do is take your 2 points and calculate the slope. So remember, your slope is equal to your y2 minus y1, so in this case -1 minus 5, over your x2 minus x1, so a 2 minus a -2. Be careful with your signs. So -1 minus 5 is a -6, and 2 minus a -2, that's the same thing as 2 plus 2. Those both become positive, so that becomes a 4. Okay, this does reduce to a -3/2. So now we know our slope, and we have 2 points from the original equation. So now you can go back through and solve this exactly the same way we have with the last 3 examples. Now, because you have 2 points, you just get to pick one of them to use. Okay? It does not matter which point you use, you will get the same answer at the end. So you choose whichever point you would like to use with the slope to plug into the equation. So in this case, we chose -2, 5. And again, our slope was -3/2. So now, just like the previous examples, we're going to plug all of that information into our equation and solve it for b so that we can write the final equation. So 5 equals -3/2 times your x value, which was -2, plus b. -3/2 times a -2. Okay, you can use your calculator to do this. Again, if you're going to use your calculator, be sure to put this -3/2 in parentheses. So if you're typing it in, you would put parenthesis -3 divided by 2, close the parenthesis, and then times the -2. Okay, fractions always need to be wrapped in parentheses. When you multiply those, you will just end up with a +3. Okay, so -3/2 times a -2 is just 3. Now your final step, solve for b, so you subtract 3 to the other side, you get b equals 2. Now you can write your final answer. Okay, so you're going to take your slope, which we originally solved for, and now our b value that we solved for, and plug them into the equation. So y equals -3/2 x plus 2 is your final answer. Okay, on the back, this next example is same situation as the previous one. We're writing the equation of the line that passes through, and we have 2 points. So we have 1, -2, and we have -5, 4. So again, before you can start plugging this into the equation to solve for your y-intercept, you first need to figure out what your slope is. Okay, so you're given 2 points. You can calculate the slope, y2 minus y1. So 4 minus negative 2. 4 minus a negative 2 is a positive 6. Then x2 minus x1, so negative 5 minus 1 is a negative 6. 6 divided by negative 6 just simplifies to be a negative 1. So now you know what your slope is. So this is just now like our original equations, or our original examples. You choose between these 2 points. You just pick one of them to use. It does not matter which one you choose. You will still get the same answer at the end. Okay, so we just chose 1, negative 2 is our point, and then the slope is still a negative 1 that we solved for. Now that you have a point and a slope, you can plug that into your equation to solve for b. So negative 2 equals negative 1 times 1. So your y equals mx plus b. Simplify this right side. Negative 1 times 1 is a negative 1. You need to solve for b, so you're going to have to add this b to the other side. Negative 2 plus 1 is a negative 1. So your b value, your y-intercept is at negative 1. Your slope was negative 1. So when you write your equation, now either one of these answers is acceptable. You could have y equals negative 1x minus 1, or you can just leave out that negative 1 and just write it as y equals negative x minus 1. Either answer is correct. It's just known that if this is just the negative, that there really is a 1 connected to that as well, but you don't have to show that. All right, another example. Very similar, just a little bit of different notation and setup in the beginning. We want to write an equation for the linear function with the values f of negative 2 equals 10 and f of 4 equals negative 2. So if you think back to quarter 1, this was that function notation that we dealt with towards the end of quarter 1. Remember that this value is your x value, so the negative 2 is your x, and your answer to these is always your y value. So this point is really negative 2, comma 10. Same thing here. F of 4 means that your x value is 4 and your y value is negative 2. Now it's exactly the same as the previous example. You have 2 points, so you need to find your slope first. Negative 2 minus 10 is a negative 12. 4 minus a negative 2 is a positive 6. Negative 12 divided by 6 is a negative 2. Now, same as the first few examples, you know your slope, and you have 2 points to pick from, so you choose one of them. I chose negative 2, 10 as my point. So I'm going to plug that into my equation. Y equals mx plus b. And your goal is to solve for the b value. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. So you then need to subtract 4 to the other side to get that b equals 6. So your equation is y equals negative 2x plus 6. Now, since your original information was written in function notation, you should write your answer to match it. So your final answer then would actually be f of x equals negative 2x plus 6. So you just change that y to an f of x because your original notation was f of, and you had a negative 2 and a positive 4. Okay, now in this example here, we want to figure out which one of the function below, so either a, b, c, or d, which function has the values that f of 4 equals 9 and f of negative 4 equals negative 7. So we want to start like the previous example. Okay? F of 4 equals 9 means that that's actually the point 4, comma 9, your x value and your y value. And then f of negative 4 equals negative 7 is the point negative 4, comma negative 7. So now you need to go through in each one of these equations and plug in the x and the y into each of them to see which one gives you a true statement. Now, it has to work, both points have to work in the same function. So don't just assume that if you get one of the points to work in the function, that it's automatically your answer. You have to check and make sure that both of these points make the equation a true statement. So in this case, f of x equals 2x plus 10. So remember that your f of x is my y value.